I'm part of Axonix. We are a mobile ad exchange, as Julie just said, and we're backed by Telefonica, which in the UK owns the O2 network. Now, my previous role was I ran the mobile advertising business in Telefonica, and we launched the business across Europe and Latin America. And before Telefonica, I worked in Google. So I've been working in mobile advertising for probably 5, 6, 7 years or so, which for this industry makes me a bit of a veteran. Now, over those years, there's been a number of conundrums that I've been thinking about with mobile advertising, and a number of conundrums that actually the industry's been thinking about. One conundrum is, why do people post so many photos of food on Facebook? That's a problem that I'm still trying to solve. The other conundrum is, why do so many big retailers still have such terrible mobile websites? This is next just one of many examples I could pull up. In this day and age, apologies if there's anybody from Next here, but in this day and age, how can you get away with a terrible mobile experience like this when you have so many mobile customers? The real conundrum that's been bothering me and a lot of people in the industry is, why is mobile advertising so small? We've spoke about how many people have mobile devices. We've talked about how much time we spend on mobile phones. And yet the amount of ad spend that goes behind mobile is still tiny in comparison to other media such as radio and print, which have half to a quarter of the amount of media time as mobile. So why is that? It's not because people aren't using mobile devices. This is a chart of mobile internet access versus desktop internet access. In the UK, in August, mobile internet exceeded desktop for the first time. This crossover point was in August this year. So it's not because people aren't using mobile devices to use the internet. Of course they are. This is a picture of internet-connected devices around the world. Not surprisingly, there are hotspots in North America and in Europe. But this chart does not include mobile devices, smartphones. Now, today, mobile or smartphone penetration in Latin America and Africa is still only about 10%. However, that is changing rapidly. David spoke about the explosive growth of programmatic. In Latin America, we're seeing explosive growth in smartphone adoption because we're now getting low-cost devices on the market that are under $100 to buy. So for these regions, the key thing is their experience of the internet will be mobile first. They don't have an installed base of desktop computers, so there won't be a legacy of desktop advertising. They'll go straight on to using mobile devices, and media should go straight onto mobile. So the question again is, why not? Or why isn't it there today? Now, I've come across a number of excuses that the industry as a whole raises when we talk about why is mobile not bigger, why isn't mobile not bigger. The one that always comes up is that mobile advertising doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I'd like to challenge that. If mobile advertising didn't work, why is it that big brands like Coca-Cola and Mondelez have made very public and very large statements around the amount of budget that they want to put behind mobile this year or in the next couple of years? If mobile didn't work, they wouldn't be putting that commitment behind it. And the reason they're putting that commitment behind mobile is because they've been testing mobile for the last 2 or 3 years, and they've worked out how to make it work. If mobile advertising didn't work, why is it growing at 100% per year? Now, that's a fast growth rate, but given the explosive growth in mobile, why is it not more, particularly in places like Latin America and the Middle East? So I think mobile advertising does work if you know how to get the best results from it, and that comes from testing and learning. And the second excuse that people tell me is that you can't measure its impact. Now, this is actually a valid excuse. It is true that there are problems in measuring the impact of mobile advertising. If you look at where people actually buy products, they don't buy products on mobile phones. There's always the headline story of somebody who's bought a yacht on eBay on a mobile app, but they're the exception. The majority, 7% of people on average, would buy a product that they've researched on a mobile on the same device. But the reality is most people would go into a retail store or they'll go onto a desktop computer to make that purchase. Now, if you're a marketer or you're a brand that's used to using desktop advertising and you're used to being able to track the consumer journey from ad impression through to a click, through to a shop visit, through to an actual purchase, of course, you're not going to get the same data, the same results from using mobile. But I think you're measuring the wrong thing. You should be measuring how does mobile drive impact and conversions in your retail store or on your desktop site, rather than expecting to be able to use your mobile data to be able to measure the impact of your mobile advertising. I thought this was an intriguing way to make other non-mobile media clickable. We need to remember that we shouldn't be using digital's metrics to assess every type of media. There are plenty of other media out there where you still can't measure the impact, you can't measure the clicks, you can't measure the number of conversions, outdoor media being one of those. So I think in the industry, we suffer from being a bit hypocritical on using certain standards for mobile and digital that we don't apply to other media that we readily use and have been using for the last 30, 40 years. Excuse 3, there's fraud. How do I know that these are actually real users that are clicking on all these ads? How do I know that it's not just somebody's fat finger that's accidentally clicked on the ad to get it off their screen? Again, this is, there is some validity to this. We're a mobile exchange and we have anti-fraud measures, but inevitably there are people that will click on mobile ads just to get it off their screen. However, we're an ad exchange. We serve billions and billions of mobile ads a month. And we get an average click-through rate of about 2% on our mobile ads that we serve. We even get click-through rates up to about 5% on some of our larger format ads. Now, on a desktop advertising, the average click-through rate is about 0.2, 0.3%. So we know that advertisers are very happy accepting 0.2 or 0.3% click-through rate because they put a lot of money behind desktop advertising. And yet they won't put money behind a 2% click-through rate on mobile, which I find very strange. Even if half of those clicks on mobile were inadvertent clicks or were not real clicks, you still have a click-through of 1%, which is still 5 times higher than on the desktop. Given that the cost of mobile ads, the CPMs of mobile ads are significantly lower than desktop, you've got a great combination of cheap inventory, higher click-through rate. I don't know why people don't think they perform well. Please also remember, there's plenty of other media that does not necessarily perform well, does not necessarily track well. TV has a lot of money still going through it. We determine targeting on TV by panels. In the UK, the panel is only a few thousand households. We scale that up to the whole country. I don't think that's particularly accurate. And we inherently know people skip the ads, and yet people still continue to put money behind TV. So let's not use double standards to assess mobile. The final excuse is targeting. Now, again, this is a very valid excuse. Mobile has suffered from poor targeting. David spoke about the value of data and using data to identify individuals at a certain moment in their consideration cycle. Mobile has suffered from bad data because if you look at, or if you have to look at why people do or do not click on mobile ads, most of the time they say they don't like mobile ads because they're not interested in the offering or it wasn't relevant to them. That's a targeting problem, not a mobile advertising problem. When you look at mobile is essentially apps. If you look at the amount of time that people spend on mobile, the majority of time is in apps. Mobile web is actually decreasing as a proportion of people's time. Now, the key thing there is that on mobile apps, there are no cookies. Desktop advertising, you use cookies. There's a whole multi-billion-dollar industry set up to buy and sell cookies to be able to do the targeting that David just mentioned earlier on. That does not exist when people spend time in apps. So this industry has suffered from a lack of data to be able to do good targeting to make mobile advertising work. However, there is a group of companies that have very good mobile data, and that's the mobile operators. Companies like O2 and Vodafone. Mobile operators have data in 3 broad categories that will be very interesting to advertisers. First of all, they've got verified demographic information. David mentioned in his presentation the use of kind of algorithmically determined probabilities that you might possibly be a guy or a girl. Operators know whether you're male or female because you've signed a contract with them. You voluntarily tell them whether you're male or female. You give them your date of birth. You give them your home address. This is verified information that can be used to verify whether an ad impression is being served to a guy or a girl or somebody that lives in central London. Secondly, they've got behavioral information because they can look at how you use your device, where you go, your historical location information to determine whether you might be a frequent traveler, for example, because you spend a lot of time roaming in other countries or going through airports. You might be a sports fan because you spend a lot of time on Saturday afternoons going to a sports stadium. So we can create segments of interests. And then finally, the great thing about mobile devices is it's always with you. There's all sorts of studies that say your phone is always within 2 feet of you, even when you're asleep. So your phone becomes a proxy for you and where you are. Now, that's a great experience for advertising, is to make advertising relevant to where you are and what you're doing right now, which is your context. So mobile operators who know where you are at any point in time, because your phone is constantly talking to their cell towers, can help to make mobile advertising much more contextually relevant. Now, first of all, this is all this data is anonymized. It's all personally identifiable information stripped out, so there's no privacy concerns. But it's about making advertising much more relevant to consumers. If we look at why that is important, everybody wins with better targeting. If you take 2 scenarios, first scenario, you've got no targeting, so you might only reach 5% of your target audience. Bit of a scattergun, machine gun approach. That means 95% of the ad impressions you're buying are theoretically wasted. Now, if you're paying £1 CPM, that means your effective CPM to reach your target audience is £20. Let's say you overlay your targeting with some better quality data. You might still only be able to reach 20% of your target audience, or at least the audience you reach is 20% of them are the people you actually want to reach. But if you look at what happens to the CPMs, the CPM that you pay might double because you've got to pay somebody for the data. But because you're reaching 4 times as many people of your target audience, the cost you actually pay to reach that audience halves. So you've got this great situation where everybody wins. The publisher wins because they're getting more money for the ad impression. The consumer wins because they're getting a much more relevant ad. And the advertiser wins because they're reaching a target audience and paying less money to do so. So data is, I believe, is what could really turbo boost the mobile advertising industry. Now, there's a number of operators that have recognized this and are working with the industry to try and improve ad targeting. Sprint have launched a business called Pinsight Media in the US, which is an ad network where they're overlaying their consumer data. As I said, I used to work for Telefonica, and Axonix is working with Telefonica to ingest their data across the countries that Telefonica operates in to improve targeting. Verizon has launched a business called Precision Marketing. They have 100 million consumers in the US. Singtel's recently made some acquisitions in this space as well. So operators are starting to wake up to the reality that the data that they have is immensely valuable and can be used to really turbo boost mobile advertising to benefit everybody in the industry. So Axonix, we are an ad exchange. We are specialized in mobile inventory. We're backed by Telefonica. And our mission is really to make mobile advertising much more relevant for people in it. We're working with many operators around the world to ingest their data. And our goal is really to deliver on the promise of both programmatic, the value of programmatic media buying, which David spoke about, but also deliver on the value and the promise of mobile advertising and making mobile much more relevant to consumers so that it performs better for advertisers and therefore they're much more prepared to spend money and commit budgets to that media. So if you'd like to help fix this mobile conundrum, what I would say is now's a great time to test and learn in mobile. Companies like Procter & Gamble, Mondelez, Unilever, Coca-Cola, they've been testing mobile advertising for the last couple of years and seen great success. They've now learned how to get the best out of mobile. But it's still a really good time to do this because mobile advertising is still very cheap. There's a very large supply of inventory, but significantly lower demand than I think there should be. So it's a good time to put some budget behind it. But what I would say is you need to test mobile properly. Nobody would ever claim to be able to test TV advertising by buying one ad. So don't do the same with mobile. And I've seen plenty of advertisers who've said they've tested mobile by putting £10,000 behind a campaign, when they're also putting £500,000 behind a TV campaign. If you're going to do mobile, if you're going to test the media properly, commit proper budget to it, and work with experts who understand mobile, work with people who've got first-party data to make sure that your experience on mobile is optimized and delivers the best results for you. And as David before me said, I'd encourage you to consider buying programmatically, work with ad exchanges such as Axonix or some of our competitors, because we provide transparency about the media costs, we enable you to do precise targeting using data, and you eliminate a lot of the secret sauce that you might get from other players in the industry that do not provide that kind of transparency to you. So that's it. I'd be delighted to hear from anybody that would like to know more about mobile or more about ad exchanges. Thank you.